Come on up here, young man. Now your box is exposed.
There we go.
Don, you ready? Everybody all ready? Good morning. My name's Andy Kahn. I'm the Director of Victim Services, Victim Advocacy for Crime Stoppers of Houston. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'd like to thank our local media, our Crime Stoppers staff, our CEO, Rania Mankarius, our Deputy Director, Nicole Christoph, our law enforcement team that's in the back. As someone who has worked with surviving family members of homicide for over 30 years and serves as a board member of Parents of Murdered Children, what happened with Jocelyn and her family is just another telling reminder of why we need to continue to do what we do. 31 years ago, 14-year-old Jennifer Ertman and 16-year-old Elizabeth Pena were brutally murdered, sexually assaulted, and when we found out what happened to Jocelyn, it just brought back a lot of memories, particularly for myself in the very same types of scenarios. But I want Jocelyn's family to know that like we were with the Ertmans and the Penas 31 years ago, and we made sure that they got justice in a very similar, unique fashion, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena became catalysts for change. Change has happened as a result of that case. Your daughter, Jocelyn, is also going to be a catalyst for change. And with that, I'd like to bring Jocelyn's mother, Alexis.
Good morning, everybody. What happened to me and my family is something that I never want any family in America to ever have to go through. There are no words to describe the pain and the suffering that we have gone through these past few weeks. We shouldn't be burying our children. We shouldn't have to live our lives in the constant fear of someone taking our kids away from us. There are no words anyone can ever tell me to make me feel better or to make my suffering less. This is something that I'll have to carry on for the rest of me and my son's life. All I have now left is to fight for Jocelyn, to fight for justice, and that is why I'm here today, because I refuse to let Jocelyn's memory fade, and I refuse to let her voice go unheard. I'm her voice now, so I will now never stop fighting for justice to be served for her. The two men who ripped my daughter away from me should have never been here. They should have never been roaming our streets freely as they were. They now get to live another day when my Jocelyn does not. I'm now supporting and fighting for Senator Cruz's Justice for Jocelyn Act, because if it had been in place, Jocelyn would be here with us today. She'd be living the life she deserves to live. I urge everyone to please support the Justice for Jocelyn Act. With it, we can really make sure that this never happens again. We can make sure that Jocelyn will never be forgotten. Thank you for everyone who's here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you for your courage being here. Kelvin, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for standing with your daughter, standing for your granddaughter. What happened to Jocelyn was wrong. It was horrific and it was evil. You know, we're standing here in the beginning of August. This should be a time when Jocelyn is running around with her friends, when she's going shopping for school about to start, when she's thinking about what 7th grade was going to entail, when she's thinking about whether she's going to try out for the school play this fall, when she's wondering about the cute boy that sits 3 rows in front of her, if he's going to ask her to go to a movie. That's what Jocelyn should be doing. It's what every young girl and young boy should be doing. But what happened that night ripped that precious 12-year-old angel away from her mother, away from her little brother, away from her grandfather, away from a family. That hole will never be filled. The pain and agony, Alexis, I admire that you can stand here and speak for Jocelyn. That is not easy. I know a lot of you just wants to curl up and cry. But you're taking that pain, and we've sat in your living room as you've told me about Jocelyn and what an amazing little girl she was. You're taking that pain that is ripping your heart to pieces, and you're using it to try to say, at least maybe we can stop another little girl, another little boy from being the victim of this. This is happening every day, day after day after day. You pick up the newspaper, you look at the news, and we're seeing the same thing over and over again. Another person murdered, another woman raped, another child brutally assaulted. And the pattern in every one of these that is happening day after day after day is these are crimes committed by illegal immigrants who were apprehended and who the Biden-Harris administration chose to release. What is so infuriating about Jocelyn's murder is it didn't have to happen. It was utterly and completely preventable. These 2 Venezuelan illegal immigrants were in custody. They were in federal custody. All the administration had to do was follow the law, and put them on a plane and fly them back to Venezuela. And Jocelyn would still be alive. She'd be laughing and playing, and she'd have her whole life in front of her. But instead, the administration made the political decision to release them. There were detention beds available, about 3,000 detention beds that were sitting there empty. But the administration made the political decision not to put them in a detention bed, but just to let them go into our community. And they came to our city. They came to Houston. And just weeks after they got here, they kidnapped and brutally assaulted and murdered Jocelyn. I've introduced the Justice for Jocelyn Act. This common sense legislation mandates that the administration detain illegal aliens who are in their custody while their cases are proceeding. That they no longer engage in catch and release, just letting go whoever comes into this country. It mandates that as long as there are beds that are available and detention facilities that are available, they must keep them there, and they must do every means necessary to ensure they keep them there. It also requires that if any individuals are released on ankle bracelets, that those ankle bracelets be monitored 24/7, and this is actually an idea Jocelyn's grandfather, Kelvin, came up with. The bill mandates that anyone on one of those ankle bracelets have a curfew. From 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. that they must be in their home and not out at night. Because tragically, we know from experience the vast majority of these horrific crimes occur late at night. And the bill provides for any violation of those terms immediate deportation. This is a straightforward, common sense step. It's something that makes sense. Those of us up here are wearing bracelets. Justice for Jocelyn. I pray that these bracelets touch more than your wrist, that they touch your heart. Because not only are we grieving for Jocelyn, but we should be grieving for the little girl or little boy who's going to be killed tomorrow. And the day after that, and the day after that. Because as long as the federal government keeps doing what it's doing, every day, releasing illegal immigrants, criminal illegal immigrants who are preying on and murdering innocent people, we're going to see more little girls, more little boys, more women, more men subjected to hell. It's not right. And as a community, we can stand up and say enough is enough. I'd now like to recognize the district attorney and my good friend Kim Ogg, who is taking the lead on prosecuting these cases. Kim?
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. I'm Kim Ogg, Harris County District Attorney. On June 17th, Jocelyn Nungare's body was found tied, nude from the waist down, halfway submerged in a bayou, murdered by two Venezuelan undocumented men who had been captured and released near El Paso, Texas. Unfortunately, they came to Houston, where after an afternoon of drinking, after construction work, which they were employed in, they encountered Jocelyn after 10 o'clock at night near a local convenience store. They lured her under a bridge and murdered her. Jocelyn Nungare did not have to die. And I want the Nungare family to know that every employee of the Harris County District Attorney's Office is committed to seeking justice for your child. Andy Kahn and Senator Cruz and I have been here before. In 1992, when the Peña-Ertman murders occurred by a group called the Black and White Gang, Jose Medellin was one of the murderers. He also was an undocumented alien who had lived here most of his life. Senator Cruz had the opportunity to defend the death penalty that he received from a Texas jury, while Senator Cruz was Solicitor General of the state of Texas. We share the experience of the Peña-Ertman families because we've known them. I've known them since it happened. So has Andy. I'm sure the senator as well. These are real people who suffered unspeakable pain because of the murder of their children by murderers, one of whom was an illegal alien at the time. This case really had resonance for all of us because of the similar facts, and our commitment in this DA's office under my leadership is the same as it was under Johnny Holmes' leadership back in 1992 when the murders of the Peña-Ertman girls were captured and prosecuted. So our commitment is to the same level of justice. We currently await additional evidence that we expect from testing. As you know, DNA testing is progressing each day, and science and technology brings us closer to justice in this case each day as we wait. As soon as we have that news, we will share it, of course, with the family and then with you, the public. I'm here today not as a partisan, but as the top law enforcement official in Harris County to support the Justice for Jocelyn Act and to thank my fellow elected colleagues, Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Troy Nehls, for filing the Justice for Jocelyn bill, because it will make us safer and because crime is bigger than partisanship. You know, if Justice for Jocelyn had already been the law of the land, there's a good likelihood that Jocelyn Nungaray would be alive today. Had the two defendants never been released, of course, they wouldn't have had the chance to ever encounter, much less assault and murder Jocelyn. Had there been a curfew and 24-hour monitoring of the ankle monitors, at least someone in government would have known they were no longer in the El Paso area to show up for their immigration hearing. And that likely would have been some violation of a condition of their release. But that didn't happen. And that's why we need the Justice for Jocelyn bill. It's an amazing thing to live in a city and practice law here and be involved in criminal justice long enough to see the same thing happening twice, more than 3 decades later. What is predictable is preventable. Without a way to identify undocumented individuals coming across the border, how are government officials ever supposed to know how to support the dangerous from the peaceful? And that's why we need every bed filled and a process that's legitimate in this country for people to enter. We have that. These individuals didn't follow it. Jocelyn Nungaray is dead as a result of it. And I am grateful to you, Senator, and grateful to you, Congressman, for trying to protect our children. Government's first responsibility is to protect us. This bill will help us do that. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ms. Hogg. Thank you for being here. The administration has been warned. They've been warned about this for over 2 years. And they've done nothing. I sent a letter to Secretary Mayorkas back in September of 2022. Border Patrol received an alert. They said, be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for Venezuelans coming through. These violent criminals, these violent gangs, they're coming through. Border Patrol, be on top of your game. Be on the lookout. They're coming. I sent a letter to Secretary Mayorkas. I said, sir, Border Patrol is receiving these reports. What are you going to do? What are we doing about this intelligence that stated that these Venezuelans are coming through? We've heard for many, many months that Maduro, obviously an illegitimate president, right? He has problems. Poverty rate's over 50%. Inflation's over 220%. They're releasing individuals from their prisons. They're coming through on the caravans. I ask them all sorts of questions. Secretary Mayorkas, what are you doing? I hear nothing. Nothing from the administration. In February 2024, Laken Riley murdered by a Venezuelan national. Recent report just came out that that killer's brother is tied to this horrible, horrible gang out of Venezuela, the Tren de Aragua. Very, very bad people. Murders. So after Miss Riley was murdered, I sent a second letter to Secretary Mayorkas asking him, hey, what are you going to do about this? You have been warned. Border Patrol is on alert. What is this administration going to do to protect the American people and make sure we have no more Laken Rileys and others? They did nothing. I heard nothing from this administration on my second letter. Unfortunately, my warnings went unanswered, and it's costing Americans their lives. In June 2024, Jocelyn, brutally murdered by 2 Venezuelan nationals. They were released into this interior by the Biden-Harris administration. Our borders are. Make no mistake, she was our border czar. Detention beds were available when they were apprehended crossing into our country. We have no way checking these individuals. As a former sheriff, people coming in here, we can work with other countries, Canada, Mexico, and others, to determine if you're coming into this country, what kind of a citizen were you in your country? We don't have the ability to do that with Venezuela. Obviously, we have a very strained relationship. So people coming through, if you think I'm going to be able to, Border Patrol is going to know what type of person that was in Venezuela, can't get the information. You cannot get the information. And Maduro, he's very clever. He doesn't want them back. He doesn't want these bad hombres coming back into this country. He's releasing them. He wants them to come here, raise chaos. He doesn't want them back. Don't ever forget what Trump said in 2015. He said, I quote, "They're not going to send us their brightest." June of this year, 2 NYPD officers were shot by these gang members. 2 of them. And now what'd you hear this week? It's insulting when New Mexico has to alert Denver PD saying that this gang, that there is a green light. There's a green light now to kill officers in the city of Denver. A green light. Of course, I sent another letter. My 3rd letter was just now sent to Secretary Mayorkas saying, what are you going to do? When are you going to put America and its people first, not last? And as of this morning, I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing from this administration. Folks, make no mistake. The Biden-Harris administration is responsible for all of it. They're not concerned about our safety. The evidence is there. It's all there for the American people to see, and they put you and your family and the American people last. And quite honestly, I do not know how they sleep at night. I do not know how they sleep at night. Shame on them. I would like to now recognize our greatest Houstonian, Mattress Mac.
Thank you, Congressman. Thanks, everybody, for being here today, for the support of the family of Jocelyn. Alexis is here, Kelvin's here, her grandfather, and Jocelyn is not here. That's the sad part. Jocelyn is not here. So the Justice for Jocelyn Act will help keep these predators, and that's what they are, predators, where they belong, in jail. The problem with something like this is the public has a short memory. I was reminded of me wailing about Centerpoint lists, and the people forgot about the problems once the air conditioning got turned back on. Well, we don't need to forget about Jocelyn, because the pain of these 2 people behind me will be there forever. And to take away the innocent life of a young teenager and expunge her from the lives of her mom and her brother and her grandfather forever is absolutely unacceptable, especially in this country. The innocent life. So now I'll introduce my my friend over here, Bryson. And Bryson's got a little story to tell. Come on up here, Bryson. How old are you, Bryson?
11.
He's 11 years old, and I want to show you something about innocence. What did Mr. Feinberg teach you?
He told me that if I be good in school, then the teacher won't be mean.
He said if you be good in school, the teacher won't be mean, right? I wish I'd learned that. And what happened?
And for the last week of school, if you got in trouble, you had no end of the year party, and I got in trouble. And at first I didn't have it, but then I did what Mr. Feinberg told me, and I was very good on the last day, and I got my party.
So what did that teach you?
It taught me that even in the worst scenarios, if you be good when you have the last chance, you may succeed.
So How many days a week you work at Gallery Furniture?
6 to 7.
And what do you do?
I help Mattress Mac. I bake cookies. I do popcorn, and I also put out chips. And sometimes I help Mr. Mac do commercials.
And what do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to own my own furniture store.
Uh-oh, you're going to put me out of business. All right, so how far do you live from where Jocelyn lived?
Maybe half a mile.
And after all this happened, were you did you go outside anymore?
No, sir, I do not go outside anymore.
Why don't you go outside anymore? You live half a mile from where Jocelyn lived.
Because I'm afraid of getting kidnapped or killed or something worse.
Does it really have to be that way? And we're here to mourn these two, Jocelyn's mom, Jocelyn's grandfather. But, you know, we'll go back to our lives, but they never will. That hole in their heart will be there forever. And so thanks to Senator Cruz for introducing the Justice for Jocelyn bill. We have to take action. We have to remember. We can't forget as time goes on, because there will always be young people like Jocelyn, innocent young people like Bryson, who occasionally do things that kids would do at school. Tell them what happened that time at school. What did that girl call you?
A girl called me a midget, and I called her an oversized pig, and I got rolled up.
They're just children. They don't deserve any of this. We have to stand up for the children, and the Justice for Jocelyn Act will do that. Jocelyn is very much remembered in the hearts of millions of Houstonians. Get that box screen over here. So take it out. The other day, this customer came up and brought me this beautiful sweatshirt. That's how much they love Jocelyn. Give it to her mom. It's got Jocelyn's beautiful picture on it. That's how much this community cares about Jocelyn. Thank you, Senator Cruz and Congressman, for introducing this bill, Justice for Jocelyn. We need not forget, we need to remember and make it better for the innocent children like Jocelyn and Bryson who live here in Harris County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you for your friendship and tremendous leadership. Bryson, that was awesome. That was really strong. And Mac, you better watch out. He's coming for you pretty quick. Although you can find Mac any time of day at the store. You're going to work until the moment you fall over and go back to your good Lord, Mac. Look, we've seen the pain. We've seen the suffering. And we can act to prevent it. All right, with that, let's open it up for questions. Well, what's next is to try to build support and to try to get other members, both in the Senate and the House, to support it. So I've introduced it in the Senate. Troy's introduced it in the House, and it's a process of trying to get bipartisan support. I will tell you historically that has been a frustrating process. So, listen, this has been a battle. I've been in the Senate 12 years. I've spent all 12 years fighting to secure the border and dealing with these crimes. You know, Kim Ogg talked about Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. When I was the Solicitor General of Texas, I argued the Medellin case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court twice. Prevailed both times. Ultimately, Jose Ernesto Medellin, who, along with his other gang members, committed unspeakable crimes. They gang raped and murdered those two little girls, and they reveled in it. Medellin wrote a handwritten confession. It's 4 pages. I've read it. I know Kim's read it. It makes your stomach turn. He was proud of what they did to those little girls that night. They kept as a trophy from that night a Mickey Mouse watch one of the girls was wearing. there is evil in the world. And so in my time in the Senate, I've consistently been fighting to secure the border. Now, we saw real successes when Trump was president. I worked very closely with President Trump to secure the border. And we ended up seeing illegal immigration plummet. By the last year of the Trump presidency, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. We had policies that worked, and Americans were safer. Texans were safer. I can tell you what is frustrating right now about the state of politics in Washington, which is much of politics in Washington is extreme, particularly on the issue of immigration. A decade ago, there were Democrats in Washington who would work with you and say, let's secure the border. There are virtually none left. I'll give you an example. Somebody else who never should have lost her life is Kate Steinle. Kate Steinle was a beautiful 28-year-old woman. She was in California. She was walking on a pier one beautiful night with her father when suddenly she was shot in the heart by an illegal immigrant who had been in and out of jail over and over and over again. He had been deported 5 times. And every time he was deported, he just came back to committing crimes. I've talked with Kate's father. As Kate was dying, he held his daughter in his arms. She looked up at him. The last words she said, "Daddy, help me." And she died in his arms. That doesn't need to happen. In response to that, I introduced Kate's Law. What Kate's Law said is that anyone who is an aggravated felon, who's a violent criminal, who repeatedly enters the country illegally, faces a mandatory minimum prison sentence of 5 years. Kate's Law is another example of common sense legislation. You look at polling, 80 to 90% of Americans supports Kate's Law. That's true, by the way, among Republicans, among Democrats, among independents. If you ask just about anybody with any sense, Kate's Law is simple common sense. Well, twice I forced a vote on the Senate floor on Kate's Law. Twice, every single Democrat voted no. Kamala Harris voted no. Every member of the Democrat Senate voted no. That's infuriating. So listen, on the Justice for Jocelyn Act, I am going to fight to try to build support, but I don't want to overstate the likelihood. I have heard no Democrats that I serve with even mention Jocelyn's name. We don't hear them mention Laken Riley's name. We don't hear them mention Rachel Marin's name. We don't hear them mention Jeremy Caceres' name. The only way this changes is if the American people demand it changes. Because if it plays out as a simple party line vote, where no matter what provision you have to enhance common safety, every elected Democrat in Congress votes no, then the legislation doesn't move. And so my hope is, look, there is power in saying Jocelyn's name. There's power in saying Laken's name and Rachel's name and Jeremy's names and Kate's name. These are real people with real families, and every one of them could have been saved if office holders cared enough to change the policies that are leading to their murders. Yeah.
We're in this situation by, if I'm correct, by the use of executive privilege. We've seen increasing usage of executive privilege over the last, say, 15, 20 years. Does the Senate, does the Congress have the power to either overrule executive privilege or take such matters to the Supreme Court in the hopes of overturning executive privilege on matters such as where we are now?
Yeah, look, it is a great question, and you were right that what caused this border crisis was a series of unilateral executive actions taken by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And where we are today is unprecedented. So let's step back and have a little bit of history. I've actually joked that Joe Biden has done something I used to think was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. Now, to be clear, I disagreed with Barack Obama on a lot of policies. But actually on immigration, Obama by and large followed the law. Obama, if you'll recall, deported millions of people. If you remember, the left got very mad at Obama. They called him the deporter-in-chief. What Joe Biden is doing, there is literally no precedent in the history of our nation for. He is simply defying the federal law. So the federal law provides, existing federal immigration law, passed by Congress, signed by the president, in the United States Code, it provides for mandatory deportation. It says they shall be detained, they shall be deported. In the law, when Congress writes shall, it's a mandatory obligation. What Joe Biden is doing is simply ignoring it and releasing millions and millions of illegal immigrants. It's 11.5 million that have come into this country since he became president. That is larger than every state in America but 8 of them. That is larger than the city of Houston. I spend a lot of time on the southern border. I go out on midnight patrol. Let me tell you what is happening right now. When you go out on midnight patrol with the Border Patrol agents, number one, they're not actually looking for illegal aliens. It's not like they're searching for them. When you go out on midnight patrol, within minutes, a group of illegal aliens will find you. They come find you and they turn themselves into you. They're all carrying with them. They have a baggie to protect it from water. They almost all have a cell phone. They almost all have some form of identification, a passport or a driver's license or a birth certificate. And they almost all have a piece of paper with a name and phone number of someone in the United States they're supposed to call when they get here. And they're being brought by Mexican drug cartels who are making billions of dollars trafficking these people. When these people arrive, I'll tell you, when you look at the women, when you look at the children, virtually every one of them has been sexually assaulted. It makes you sick to your stomach. Troy, you stood there when you look at a 10 and 11-year-old girl who you know what the last 6 months of her life has been. Because these these human traffickers are vicious. And when they get there, the Border Patrol just installed a new app on their phones. I've seen the app. It's on their phones. It allows them to process an illegal alien in 2 minutes. The alien will pull out their identification card. They zap it with the phone. It populates all the different fields. And they ask them, what city do you want to go to? And one after the other, they'll say, I want to go to Houston. I want to go to Chicago. I want to go to New York. I want to go to L.A. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris put them on buses and put them on planes, and they fly them to every city in America. That is directly contrary to the law. And I got to say, our Constitution, frankly, was not designed for a president that just flouts the law. Article 2 of the Constitution says the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. When you talk to Border Patrol agents, I know many Border Patrol agents, they're frustrated out of their minds. They go risk their lives, they apprehend dangerous people, and their political superiors say, let them go. That's happening every single day. Now, here's the good news. This problem was caused by unilateral executive action. It can be largely fixed by unilateral executive action. There were 3 decisions that Joe Biden made the first week in office that caused this crisis. The first week in office, he immediately halted construction of the border wall, number 1. He reinstated catch and release, the disastrous policy where when you apprehend someone, you let them go. And he pulled out of Remain in Mexico. Remain in Mexico was an international agreement Trump had negotiated with the government of Mexico.
It worked incredibly well. It caused our numbers to plummet, so that when Joe Biden came into office, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. All Biden had to do was nothing. But instead, he ripped up that international agreement, and our numbers went from the lowest in 45 years to the highest in recorded history immediately. The good news is, in terms of how you fix it, if we have a new president in January of 2025, the first week in office, I guarantee you those three decisions will be reversed. And we will secure the border again. And listen, if the American people say enough is enough, what I hope will happen is that we see some congressional Democrats who are willing to support common sense legislation to keep our children, keep our families safe. That will only happen if their constituents demand it.
Senator, how do you incorporate background checks, criminal history to a bill like this, people from Venezuela, for example?
Yep.
Because, I mean, I've had the opportunity to talk to several family members, childhood friends of these two individuals. At least one of them, I mean, the stories just add up. I mean, several people can't be telling me the same story, that this person has a terrible criminal history in countries like Chile, like Colombia. And so how do you incorporate that? And also, I don't know if this would be for district attorney, but I think it's important to know, how are you investigating those affiliations, as well as if one of them really does have kids? Because I know that was going to be a piece of information that was going to be used for a possible reduction of the bond. And, these stories just don't add up.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt we need much more vigorous vetting of the criminal history, of the gang affiliation, of people presenting themselves at the border. I've introduced multiple pieces of legislation that address the border in a comprehensive way, that secure the border, that put the resources we need, that change the policy, and that include within them vigorous vetting. That is a very important part of what we need. And by the way, on immigration, I've for a long time summed up my views on immigration with 4 words: legal, good; illegal, bad. There's a right way to come to this country, which is you stand in line, you follow the rules, you go through vetting, you do a background check. It is a process. We have millions of legal immigrants who followed that process, came to America because they wanted to be Americans. My father came from Cuba in 1957, came to Texas with nothing. Couldn't speak English. He washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. But my dad came to come to the University of Texas. That's the way the system is supposed to work. We need real and vigorous vetting right now. That doesn't happen with illegal immigration. It doesn't happen with open borders. The people coming over, we don't know who they are, and it's exacerbated. Venezuela in particular is a problem because Maduro is a thug and a tyrant. He's illegitimate. He's trying to steal an election despite the fact that over 70% of the voters voted for the opposition. And I believe Maduro is very systematically taking his jails and looking for the worst criminals in Venezuela and saying, send them to America. I think he is deliberately sending murderers, he is sending rapists, he is sending child molesters. It's the same strategy Fidel Castro employed during the Muriel boat lift in the 80s, where Castro emptied out his jail and he emptied out his lunatic asylums. He sent people that were crazy and that were violent and dumped them all on the shores of Miami, and it resulted in massive crime. It is a real problem. I'll tell you, it's also a problem with terrorism. Look, we're sitting here. Just this week, the news broke there were 2 illegal immigrants from Jordan who tried to breach the marine facility at Quantico. They came in a box truck. They claimed that they were Amazon delivery drivers. They were not. That was a lie. When the guards wouldn't let them in, they tried to drive the truck forcibly into the Quantico base. Thankfully, the anti-vehicle barrier stopped them. They were apprehended. They're both from Jordan. We don't have the background on them. We don't right now, at least publicly, know the motive. We don't know if they're involved with terrorist organizations. Just this week, the news broke they were released on bail. One with a $10,000 bail, the other with a $15,000 bail. Look, the risk we're having at our border number one, of violent crime, but number two, of terrorism. I believe today we're at a greater risk for a major terrorist attack than we've been any time since September 11th. And so I think there is a national security and public safety imperative to secure the border. We definitely need to do that, but I want to say here, what I'm focusing on with the Justice for Jocelyn Act is a much more focused solution. It's not a bill that would solve every problem at the border, but it's a bill we drafted designed to stop this specific problem. If these murderers had been kept in a detention facility, which was empty, there was no reason on earth they couldn't have been put in that facility, Jocelyn would still be alive. This ought to be something everyone can come together, and that is my hope and prayer. And I just want to, in closing, I want to say again to Alexis and Kelvin, thank you. I cannot imagine trying to stand up and make it through what both of you are making through. And I know you are fighting for Jocelyn. You're fighting because you love her. But your courage is inspiring, and every one of us, we're praying for you. Thank you.